Greetings, astronauts, and welcome back to Astro Candy. Hello, my name is Raven. I'm your host, and I'm so happy that you're here today. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you, and I know you're going to appreciate this episode. If you remember, which you might not, which I understand if you don't, because it was a long time ago and a lot's happened since 2022. It's almost like 2 years ago. Holy shit. But if you remember, I had a radio personality, Emily Sklar, on the Astro Candy podcast. And it was a weird time for Emily because she had just chosen to step away from the radio industry full time. That was after 11 years of hosting shows on top radio stations like Detroit's Channel 95.5, Washington, D.C.'s Hot 99.5. And if you're curious as to what led to her decision, you can listen to the Bet on Yourself with Emily Sklar episode. It's in season 2. I've linked it in the show notes. That's all the backstory that you need for this conversation, so I would listen to that first. But if you already know what's up, this episode is going to bring you up to speed. So basically, Emily, with her microphone and her childhood dream, moved from DC to LA at the beginning of 2023. So this conversation fills in the blanks. It gets you up to speed from then to now. A lot happened. You'll find out about how she achieved some of her biggest dreams, like appearing on the nationally syndicated On Air with Ryan Seacrest. She's working at 102.7 KISS FM and with the iHeartRadio podcast team. And she's performing live in venues around the LA area. It's honestly incredible, and she recognizes how much she's accomplished. But this podcast isn't really about achieving your dreams. It's about the pursuit of them and the hidden cost that comes in that pursuit. This is part 1 of a 2-part episode where we discuss the challenges of chasing a childhood dream and why it's crucial to believe in yourself when nobody else will. We also talk about the importance of creating opportunities instead of waiting for them, and ignoring other people's opinions and limiting beliefs when, your parents, your siblings inevitably try to put their 2 cents in. And also the importance of making empowered decisions that support your goals and long-term vision. We give advice on investing in your future and confronting those fears that inevitably come with following those dreams. And Emily shares what it was like to move to LA without a plan and how she held the faith when fear and doubt crept in, because it always does. We also discuss the reckoning that you face when you achieve your dream, and it's not everything you thought that it would be. If you listen to my Surviving Saturn's Return episodes, there's a part 1 and a part 2. After part 2, I kind of give a little bit of an update how I left Philly and I'm back home with my parents and I plan to move to LA. And I really haven't talked much about it since then. I have not given any sort of updates. So while Emily is taking us through her story, we are kind of talking about mine simultaneously. So you'll also hear some updates about my journey and the pursuit of my dreams. And this is really just a real, raw, honest conversation about how difficult it can be when you are starting over, changing the trajectory of your life and really doing something that lights you up, but you don't actually know if it's gonna pay off or be worth it in the end. These are the things people don't tell you about pursuing your dreams, and it's all here in this episode. Well, most of it's here because remember, this is just part 1 and we'll have a part 2. But I really loved this conversation with Emily. I know you will too. And if you do, please go to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, rate 5 stars. I would love that if you would rate 5 stars, or just tell a friend. Send this episode to a friend. All right, enjoy. This feels surreal.
Crazy. But so right.
But so right. No, I feel like we're living in a version of reality that we dreamed up a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
But back then we didn't even know that it could come to fruition. Like we were just dreaming big, thinking big, hoping for the best, right?
Back then we really didn't know each other, which is kind of crazy to think about. That was our first ever conversation.
Which is funny because we really We got deep on that conversation. I was just listening back to that podcast as like a refresher of where we both were in that time and space. So I'm actually going to play a clip
Ooh, okay.
of it now. You had a pretty big day. When was it? Last week was what, your final day full time with Hot?
Yeah, literally a week today was my last night show on the radio station that kind of made me pick up and move out of my hometown and kind of changed my life. So I kind of feel like I'm, floundering out in the wilderness a little bit because I moved here for a job and just voluntarily kind of stepped away from it. And now I'm kind of like, okay, let's regroup. Now what? Like the whole world is at my fingertips, it feels like.
And what's so funny about this, Emily, is you were like, the world was your oyster, but you still had that fear, kind of like what's going to happen on the other side, fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I want to talk about today. Taking the leap and the reality of following your dream. Did it live up to your expectations? Did it let you down? Was it harder or easier than you imagined it to be? So we're going to talk about that. But first, I'm going to blow out this fucking candle. I can hear it crackling in my headphones. Do you mind? Thank you. The thing about those candles is they smell delicious and they're very earthy because it's like, oh yeah, it feels like you're like campfire vibes or something, but they just annoy me.
I know it is a little distracting, but it does it definitely sets the mood and sets the vibe, and which I feel like is something we do all the time whenever we have conversations. We're very much about like setting the mood, setting the energy, setting the vibe, like moving forward, making sure it's all aligned.
Yeah, that's what I did today. I was like, I have to get everything ready. And now that we got all the technical difficulties out of the way, we're ready. So, okay, let's go back in time really quick to that conversation. And I guess let's peel back the curtain here because I don't think I really talked about this much. But after our conversation, you and I both went to LA.
Mm-hmm.
So, should we talk about what happened? What went down in that infamous trip?
Absolutely. So basically, we had this amazing conversation, and kind of afterwards I felt like we connected for sure, and somehow we both got to talking about the idea that our dream place to live was going to be LA. And I think like when you're at a crossroads in your life, no matter how far down the line it is, you like to explore whatever options could potentially be out there because, at some point you may want to just change course and change path. And I feel like you were kind of on this journey where you were looking down a lens and you weren't sure where you wanted your life to go, and you had something in the back of your mind and in your heart that you wanted to like just see what else was out there. Didn't necessarily mean you were going to jump right then, but you wanted to see what else is out there. Me too. I had this like burning desire. I knew I wanted to make it quickly, but I just didn't know if that was like realistic, I guess, or not. And so when you said that you were going to take a trip to LA and just kind of like collect yourself, find yourself, see life outside of the bubble that you were currently in, I was like, oh my God, that is my dream place. And it was kind of like the little push in the right direction and almost like the first little sign that like you should take this leap that I needed. And so I was kind of like, hey, do you mind if I join you or meet up with you or test the waters as well? And you were like, absolutely.
Yeah, I was so surprised that you were down too, by the way. That was such a, well, one, we obviously connected like you said, but two, you were just like, yeah, I'm so down. And I'm like, oh, wow, this girl's actually really serious about like LA. And I thought it was so cool that we kind of had that same vision, the same dream for our future. And we were at a similar place where I came to the realization like it's not going to happen unless I make it happen.
Yes. That's like the biggest realization. And like, I feel like that was like the biggest hump to overcome, knowing that like because for both of us, I feel like we were waiting on this like roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
For so long. And we were just like, you know what? I'm sick of it. Like, I got to get off. Like, I got to take it into my own hands. And part of you is, I don't know if you felt this way, but for me at least, part of me was like, well, I've waited this long. And if I keep waiting, maybe something bigger will happen versus what I can make happen on my own. And it's like, I've waited this long. Should I keep waiting? Should I keep playing the game? Was all of the waiting that I've done already in vain if I don't? But then I was like, no, I can't keep waiting. Like, I have to just trust myself at this point. Like, it wasn't worth it to me to keep waiting.
9 times out of 10, I feel like it's not worth it.
No. Mm-mm.
We talked about that on the episode. It's called Bet on Yourself with Emily Sklar. So go back and listen to that if you want a little bit more context. But I have realized in my life and in my career especially that the only way I ever achieved anything I wanted to was because I like set my mind to it and did not take no for an answer. I heard so many no's. I remember when I was in Minneapolis and I was like, oh, I've been doing nights. Like, you get the grind. Like, we talked about this in the first
for sure.
episode. And it was like, I love this city. I love my friends, but I don't want to do nights anymore. So I tried everything to make it work with my boss at the time. I was like, I'll come in and do middays. I will do this. I'll do that. I'll volunteer for this. Like, what if we do this? And I just remember him being like, I'm sorry, we just like don't have a place for you. And
I
at that
literally
moment,
had that same conversation where I was like throwing out any idea, anything like, help me, help you, like, please. And the writing was on the wall. He was just like, there's not a place for you. And it was like, yeah, you're at a crossroads. You can either sit and wait and hope that a position, a spot opens up, the stars, the sun, the moon align, or you can take the information that you have and decide what you want and go after it and hopefully come across somebody who's going to say yes to you. And that's what I did. I mean, I found the next opportunity, somebody who really believed in me, someone who wanted me to do middays. So I guess the point is that to make anything happen, you have to make it happen. Do not count on a handout. Or I think we all have this like dream of like, oh, and then like I'm going to be walking down the street and someone's going to stop me and be like, you right there, you're a star. Like, I'm going to make all your dreams come true. Can I tell you something so funny about that? When I was a little kid, I would like sing in my shower and like hope. In what reality would someone like, I literally remember being like, someone's going to hear me from like down the street and they're going to be like, that girl needs, I was like 6. I'm like singing in the shower, like really. But I feel that you always have this idea like someone's going to see the talent in me and like they're going to make it happen for me. And like, that's not the world.
That's not the world. But I think the point is, if you know that you have talent, and you can do something, whatever it is. It's singing, it's dancing, it's being on the radio, it's hosting a podcast. If you know you have that in you, it's up to you to show people that you have it and then find the person who's like, okay, yes, you. You have to shop yourself around.
Yeah. And the biggest thing too, I feel like I've learned in the past year is if you have the confidence to, show someone what you've got, the more likely they will be to buy into you and what you've got.
Yeah, if you've got the confidence, if you're like, I'm betting on myself, and if you do too, like your ROI is going to be insane. Like that's magnetic. That's how you get people to get behind you and want to be part of your team and want to be part of the greatness that you're emitting.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a tangent, but I think it's important. I think it's an important conversation to have because I know so many people who are in situations where they're like, well, what do I do? Do I just sit and wait and hope? And my answer is always no.
No.
Go find the person who's going to say yes.
Sometimes that person
dream.
might be you too,
Yeah.
You may be the person that needs the yes. Like you need to give yourself that yes, that permission to do it and then make the things happen for yourself.
And it's so much easier now than it was. Right? I mean, I remember when the only way to like be visible was terrestrial radio or being on television, like a local news station or something. Streaming wasn't a thing. Podcasting wasn't a thing. People quite literally doing what radio, television stations do with millions and millions of dollars, but on like a budget and with their laptop and a microphone that plugs into your computer on a USB. Like that wasn't a thing. And so you did need someone to say yes. But now it's easier to take the chance on yourself and be like, you know what? I want to be a podcast host. So I'm going to go get a microphone and get Audacity or Adobe Audition or what the fuck ever.
Yeah.
And I'm going to record it and I'm going to upload it.
I think that's a really interesting conversation too, because I feel like that is a root of a lot of people's fear, right? People that are in kind of roles in which the norm used to be, you needed to have like a machine behind you to make it in the way in which you wanted. To get rid of all of that, to let that all go and to kind of like start from scratch and rebuild and do it on your own, that can be like the scariest hump. And it's just a reminder that like in 2024, so many people think back to like 2020 when TikTok first started and see where some of those creators who were consistent, who just like put time into themselves, like where some of those people are right now. It's going to be a slow build, but putting that time and that effort into yourself the way you would for someone else's company and someone else's machine. If you already had the skills to impress those people, then you have the skills to do it for yourself. So don't let that fear of like, well, I don't have this big machine behind me, I don't have all this stuff. Like, it is such a different landscape. And like, if that's where the fear lies, just remember how much time and effort you put in for someone else and invest it back into yourself.
Yes.
And you'll see how much you can grow.
Definitely. So, and that's essentially what we both did.
Kind of. I feel like you more than me, but.
No. Well, let's talk about when we were in Los Angeles. So we made it to LA and we did meet up. And I think that trip really solidified, yes, Los Angeles is where I want to be. And not because, I've got a job telling me I need to be out there or whatever outside of myself reason. It was solely soul driven that I wanted to be in LA. I wanted to fulfill this dream that I'd had that still very much felt like it was a dream for me that I wanted to achieve. And what I mean by that is that, of course, sometimes you have these big lofty dreams when you're younger and then you get older and you're like, oh yeah, that's not a dream for me anymore. I don't want that for myself. But I still wanted it. So I came out and I was like, yes, this is a yes for me. I'm definitely going to do it. I'm definitely going to figure out how to make this happen. You were a little bit more unsure. And I want to talk about the conversation that we had at Jones on 3rd.
Yeah.
Because I know that was pivotal for you. I can't remember what the fuck I said to you,
Yeah.
But I'm happy I said it. So talk about that.
So I think for me, very similar to you, like it was this deep rooted childhood dream. And I've always been someone that I can't let go of those kind of dreams. Even if they don't necessarily fit my current life, if it's something I wanted when I was a little kid, it's like I want to make that inner child in me happy at all costs, right? So I had this deep-rooted dream to come here based on nothing but a dream. So it's like even that trip coming here, it's like I didn't know what I was looking for to convince me. I just knew I wanted to come, but it wasn't really based in anything, right? So like coming here wasn't necessarily swaying me one way or the other. And I think at that moment, more of the like the logic behind like, you don't have a job here, you don't have an income, you don't have a place to live, you wouldn't have a roommate, like you're really starting from scratch. Do you really want to deplete your savings? All of that logic started coming in. And I was like, okay, shoot, is this realistic? Should I save some money? Should I, take more time and apply for jobs and then come here with more of a kind of like a substantial reason to come? And I think I was letting outside influences kind of give me that, because I know a lot of people move here, you always hear those stories, moved here with $5 in my bank account and a dream and I made it work. And I feel like that is really the way it's going to work. If you come here with a dream and basically no backup plan, that's where that drive comes in and that hustle and that grit. And I think I was letting outside factors kind of influence me. And what you said to me was, you can't appease this person and you can't live your life for that person. Like, this is your life. And if it's something you want to do it for you. And I don't know why hearing that in that moment, because I feel like people say that all the time, but just hearing that in that moment, because I think I was going down such a tangent explaining like, well, this person's telling me this, and you kind of just stopped me. And I had no, rebuttal to that because you were right. And so in that moment, I was like, what do I really want? And I was like, I just want to take the leap.
It's a very empowering place to be when you finally realize, like, this is my life. And I know it's popular on TikTok to be like I'm the main character, but it's true. Like, you're the main character of your storyline, and it's up to you to push the story forward in a way that's going to serve you, not mom and dad, not your siblings, not your childhood best friends. Everybody's going to have their opinion, and it's all going to be based on their own perceptions and limiting beliefs. And you just have to block out the fucking noise, because at the end of the day, it is your fucking life and you have to live it, nobody else. And I know for me, in a lot of my decisions, I think could I live with myself if I don't do this thing? I'd have to live with that regret, or I'd have to live with whatever it was. And so For me, it was like, I have to do this because this is what I deeply, truly want. And anything else, like moving back to Minnesota or staying at home in Ohio with my parents, was going to be a cop out.
Yeah, because you had a moment too. So I moved here a couple months before you did. And you came back out and revisited just before you were thinking of actually pulling the trigger and making the move, like very close to the time. And we had another moment. And I wasn't so sure you were actually going to come, which is so funny because I feel like that conversation on Jones on Third was such a role reversal where you seemed so sure and so stable and so confident and you knew it was coming. And for me, it was a little bit closer to the time where I wanted to come. And I was having those, like, you know, the logic was sinking in and the cold feet. And then the role reversal happened and I was living here. And you, honestly, there was a moment where I was like, oh, she's not coming.
Yeah.
So tell me about that because we never really talked about what that decision was like for you.
Good question. I remember that vividly because you took me to that like
lookout point.
Yes.
And we were overlooking the entire city. It was very much like a movie where, you know, you had the whole city at your fingertips and you really were like looking out onto what could be your future and deciding if you wanted to grab it or let it go.
Yeah. So for me, I was thinking a lot about the past. And I was thinking about how I had romanticized and put on a pedestal the morning show. That was my driving force for radio and my career. And I just was like, oh man, I want to make it to this morning show. Big city, top 10 market, like the kind where you walk into the building and it's in the middle of the city and you hear all the bustling and the cars and the honking and there's people everywhere and you're in a glass building and you're overlooking the city and it's so fucking amazing. And, you know, I did that and I was so disappointed. It did not live up to the dream that I had. It did not live up to the vision. It did not fulfill me in the ways that I thought it was going to. And so when we were at that lookout point, I was like, what if this is just that again? What if this is just me romanticizing living in Los Angeles and what my life could be like and how amazing and oh my God, I'm just like bopping around West Hollywood and Beverly Hills and I'm going to brunches, I'm at the beach, like palm trees, light breeze, like everything's so fun. And I was having cold feet. You were seeing that in real time.
Yeah.
Me experiencing cold feet and just being like, is this going to be fulfilling? As fulfilling as I need it to be? Or am I just going to be better off? Remember, I think I said this to you. I was like, am I just going to be better off like moving back to Minnesota?
Yeah. And I looked at you and I was like, no, no.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing about happiness and chasing it because, and this is a whole like existential thing, right?
Yeah.
Because they say don't chase
too.
Happiness you create. And I definitely believe that. But at that time, I was thinking about the times where I really was genuinely happy, where my life felt so fulfilling and enriched, and I had the best friends and a great career, and that was Minnesota.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, well, if I already know I can be happy there. But then it was like, Raven, that was 8-9 years ago.
Yeah.
The city's changed. The people are different. The dynamics are different. Like your friends are all in long-term relationships. They're married. They're having kids. Like, you know, and so it was just like, where do I fit in this equation? Like, where do I belong? And what's really going to fulfill me? It was having a whole fucking crisis. And you witnessed that in the car. And I genuinely was like, am I going to do this? I don't know.
It's ironic too, because we were quite literally at the edge of a cliff when you were having this crisis. Like you were at the edge and you had to like, you know, either jump or fly.
I mean, obviously I ended up jumping, but the reason for that was the reason I make any of my decisions. Can I live with the regret of not doing this? It's kind of nice. I had the experience in Minneapolis and I know it fulfills me and it lights me up, but I never had this and I always wanted it. And yeah, it was going to be a coin toss. It could end in absolute fucking flames like the Philadelphia experience. And I could be just like back to ground zero where my life just felt like it was blown to bits. Or it could be the best thing ever. And that's the fucking risk that you take. I think when you're following your dreams, nobody really tells you that. Nobody tells you how risky it is because you genuinely do not know if it will pay off or if you'll be happy or if you'll get out of it what you're hoping to. No one tells you that. No one tells you that there's a very real possibility you're going to fucking hate it and you're going to be like, this is the biggest mistake of my life. Or it could go the other way. It could go either way.
Yeah. And I think too, the biggest lesson I've learned in, quote, following your dreams is that it's okay if dreams change, and more so following your heart and following your gut and letting that kind of guide you. Because we get so wrapped up in this idea of like, well, I'm chasing my dream, so I have to make my dream work. But like, if it's not actually your dream anymore, the pivot is, I think, the most important thing that you can learn.
I mentioned it in my Surviving Saturn's Return episodes where I kind of talk about why I think I was so deeply unhappy with achieving that dream and of being in Philadelphia and having the morning show. And it's because I realized a dream that I actually no longer had, even though I knew it wasn't really right and I didn't really actually want it anymore. Because I remember I knew I was just like, I don't really want to be in radio anymore. This was before I moved to Philly. And I was like, well, I feel like there's something else out there for me. And radio was never, I don't know if this is your experience, but radio was never supposed to be
the end game.
The end game.
Same. No, I think for me, it was like definitely something I liked in my life, but for me, it's music. And it was just a means to, and music in connection with people, right? And which perfectly sums up radio, but it's like one fragment of that world. And I knew I wanted to ride the wave as long as I could, but that there was something else I was going to want to try out and test. And how long can you just stay doing one aspect of what you like?
Yeah. So I guess the moral of the story is when you are thinking about your big dreams, check that shit. Is it ego or is it soul?
Oh my God. Ego is like the killer.
Ego will have you feeling so unfulfilled once you achieve whatever it is you think is going to make you happy. Whereas if it's a soul driven goal, which for me, it was very much about like, okay, I'll admit, when I was younger, I was like, I'm going to go to Hollywood. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be on red carpets or interviewing celebrities was what I really wanted to do. Like E! News, next Juliana Rancic, like catch me there. But
Juliana Rancic, by the way, can I just say, she had a chokehold on us like
she
millennial
sure fucking
age.
did.
Oh my God. I remember I wanted to be her so badly and was so mad that I don't know if you felt the way, but in college, we had a sports journalism course that you could take.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is there not an entertainment journalism class? I wanted that so badly.
Oh, me too. I could not fathom that. And I was like actually thinking when I was in college, I was like, you know what? I'm going to fucking graduate from this school and be so fucking rich. And I'm going to fund a scholarship for entertainment, like aspiring entertainment journalists and like news reporters and stuff like that. But did that happen? No.
No. That's how I fell into radio though, because it was close enough.
That is exactly how I fell into radio too. That's so funny. I was like, do I want to do hard news reporting and like weather reports and traffic? Or do I want to talk about Justin Bieber and just not be seen?
Exactly.
That
Wear your
one.
pajamas every day.
Exactly.
Sign me up.
Anyway, back to soul versus ego. You know, that's what I wanted when I was a kid. And actually, I do think that was very soul aligned. But as I got older, the dream of California sort of changed and it represented to me ease and just a sense of belonging in a way that was a lifestyle I just wanted. And I'm not talking about the wealth or any of that. I just mean beaches, sunshine, palm trees, fresh air, lots of activity. People are so active here. They're always exercising. Like, I love that people love what they do. There's so many creatives. There's so many people who are passionate and they do like things for fun. And I go to backyard comedy shows and it's just like, I love that people love what they're doing and they love this state and they love this city. And that's what I really was aspiring to when I moved here.
I finally understand Disney adults now. I was the biggest, I was like the biggest, God, I don't want to say this, but I will. Like, I was definitely like a little bit of a Disney adult hater. I was like, what? Like, you're a grown person and you're going to spend money on going to a theme park? But I get it now. People do it. It's an activity. There's good food there. Like, people are fun. I understand. Like, there's such an energy here and like a lifestyle shift where people prioritize like their fun and their outside life just as much as their like work and they take things seriously that I feel like have never been taken seriously before to me, like music.
Yeah.
Learning someone's a musician, like it's looked at as a serious thing that they're doing, not just like a cute little hobby. It's like the mindset here is just so different.
Yeah. You know, you saying that makes me think like LA is really just a bunch of people from middle America who are misfits, who like had these dreams and like into dance and music and the arts. And then they all moved to LA and now we're all vibing together and having the best time.
All the transplants, yes.
Yeah. Except on the west side. That's where they make the real money.
Oh my God, girl. One day. We're getting
One
that.
day.
We're only 1 year in, not even for you.
True. Okay, so back to the plot. You move. I know we're kind of like going a little bit back and forth, but now let's talk about you gearing up to move, what you were thinking and feeling before you made the move, and then how the first couple months went when you were getting here and settled.
Okay. So it's funny because I recently was just looking back on a text that I was sending to someone in DC where I was formerly living, right around the time where I kind of announced that I was going to be leaving and picking up and moving. And in those text messages, I see myself saying to them, like, I'm really nervous, but I have to do it. It was these nerves, but this unwavering leap of faith in myself that I've never really taken before. I've always been like a calculated risk kind of a person. Like I'm not afraid of a risk, but there's definitely some calculations I make before them. And I feel like this one, while it was definitely strategic, there was just a lot of uncalculated risk. And I knew that. And I was like willing to accept. And I was not a person of like faith in the universe before I took this leap. I didn't really pay attention to that as much.
Okay.
But around the time when I was making this leap, I don't know if like the TikTok algorithm got me, if it knew that I was like seeking out a sign or what. I started to get like fed all of this stuff about like faith, universe, you know, just like belief, manifesting. And I was using all of that and it really put me in almost like a fake it till you make it kind of mentality where like if you say it enough times, you'll believe it. And that's definitely where I was outwardly telling everyone, like, I'm scared, but I'm doing it and I don't care and it's going to work. Like I kept saying, it's going to work. It's going to work. And one of my fault is like, I'm honest to a fault sometimes. And I wasn't allowing myself to fully admit out loud that like, it might not work. No, I was like, you're not doing any of that. Just put out into the world that it will work. So I had this blind faith coming here. And I think that really served me well because I had some very specific goals. I've never been a goal person before, but I made myself come up with some very specific goals of what I wanted when I moved here. One of those was to get onto a podcast team that produces shows. And I had been trying to get on this team for probably like a year prior to moving. And I also really wanted to get on Kiss FM. That was like, if I wasn't going to get on a morning show and radio, Kiss FM was the top of the top. Like I had been dreaming of walking the halls in front of the Kiss FM studios for probably at least a decade. And I was like, if I'm here, I have to try. And one way or another, I kind of started at ground zero. I basically got my foot in the door with iHeart answering phones, which is ironically the way I started in radio in general, answering phones for a morning show. And, you know, what you just said, I had to check my ego at the door. But I knew that when I was younger and when I first got into radio, answering phones was, and by the way, this was like the universe sending me a sign. The person that was doing that role was leaving the week that I got there. And they knew I already knew how to do it. So they were like, well, we do need someone to step in and do this. So if you're willing to, we'll let you in the door kind of thing. And I was like, done, I'll do it. And that kind of jump started my ability to later get onto this podcast team that I had been trying to get on for like a year, and also ended up opening the door for me to do shifts on Kiss FM, which fulfilled a decades-long dream of mine, and got interviewed by Ryan Seacrest. I always wanted him to know that I could sing, and he's like had me sing on the air, which like what? The fact that I can even say that out loud right now, and that it's not like that I'm like, oh yeah, it's happened twice. Like what? The fact that it even happened once is crazy. So I do think like that blind faith in myself, it kept me going. It was like the motor that I needed to like power myself through the scariest of times where I could have just, you know, said no or waited for something bigger or better. But I knew like just take the opportunities that are in front of you and like keep moving on that path and see where they lead. So yeah, it was crazy.
If you don't believe in manifestation in the universe now.
Oh, I do wholeheartedly.
Okay, I was about to say, like,
wholeheartedly.
The whole Ryan Seacrest story is just insane. Like, visualizing that as a child or however old you were, just younger, and that actually coming to fruition. And for anybody listening, Kiss FM is a big fucking deal. It's the biggest deal. I want to say, like, comparable to like being on Z100 in New York.
Yeah.
Like, there's two pinnacles in radio in my POV. It's Kiss FM in Los Angeles, Market 2, or Z100 in New York, Market 1. Markets meaning like how many people, the population that it
Basically,
serves.
if you work in radio and you want to get to the top,
Right.
that's the top.
So it's a very big deal. And there's just so much to dissect from this and like little anecdotes because you did not wait for somebody to say, oh, Emily, you're the one. No, you were like, hey, hi, me. I'm Emily. I'm moving from DC. I would love to do whatever. I will mop the fucking floor. And that's my part two, is checking the ego, humbling your fucking self. Because if you want to make any type of move ever in your career or whatever it is, a pivot, you have to get your hands dirty. You do, especially when you're an outsider because you were literally across the country working for iHeart. Now you're coming in and you're coming into a radio station where people have been for 10, 15 years waiting for their turn.
That was a big fear of mine too. Let me just say that I made a really conscious effort in the very beginning to make it known that I wasn't trying to step on toes. And I knew that coming here was kind of a big, I wouldn't say a big fuck you to like where I've been, but I wanted it to come across as I was grateful for everything that I've had up until now. And that coming here was a sole decision, not like I want to bulldoze over who's already here and who's waited their turn kind of a thing. It's like, if there's room for me and if this is meant to be for me, then I want to be here. And if there's a role I can play, put me in. My fault is that I waited too long to really voice what I actually wanted. That is a big lesson I think I learned in all of this, is when I was younger, I remember I sat down with one of my bosses and he was kind of like, what do you want to do? Like, what do you see yourself doing? And I think I told him 6 different things. And then I walked out of that office one day and he told me later, a couple years later, because he ended up hiring me for something. He told me later that he was like, when you walked out of that office, I thought I would never see you again. I didn't think you were going to make it. I didn't think you had any focus or any idea of what you wanted, and you weren't going to make it anywhere.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I've learned that you need to be more intentional with what you want. And not that I made the same exact mistake, but I definitely found myself in the second city that I lived in waiting too long to speak towards what I wanted because I thought that they would see it in what I was doing. I thought that they would see in my actions that I was worthy of the things that I wanted and I wouldn't have to say them. And so that was lesson number 2. Know what you want is the first lesson. And be intentional in how you speak about it. Don't just let your actions and a hope think that that'll come across, right? That they'll know what you're looking for. You need to speak upon it, because I think I waited too long to really voice where I was going. And I almost waited to the point where I was like, I can't wait any longer. By the time I got here, it's like I learned these lessons and I knew what I wanted. I knew where I wanted to go and I knew the things that I wanted to see. And it was just so much easier to maneuver. But waiting for the answer and then not getting the one that you want after you feel like you've waited your turn, that was the hard part. And that's when I was like, no, I'm not getting the answer that I want to hear anymore. I'm not even getting any sort of clarity or any sort of answer. And I feel like I played the game. I waited for so long. Like, now I have to do it all over again. I'm speaking up. I'm doing the things and I'm still not getting an answer. No, gotta go.
Yeah. It's just so funny, the similarities in our stories, because that's how I felt in Dallas. It was like I had put time and energy and effort in, and I was like gearing up to be part of a morning show there. And it just like kept getting pushed back and oh, like we're working on it. And it just became very clear to me that it wasn't a priority and I could be waiting forever. And in the time that has been realized, like this opportunity of a morning show has been realized, it's been 5 years since then. I could have been waiting 5 years. But instead, I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to go join a morning show that actually wants me. And, that was a hard lesson in itself. But still, I did it. And then I was like, okay, this is not for me anymore. And now I'm in LA. I bopped around, yeah. But I feel like I got out of it so much more than had I just sat and waited my turn. And like you said, like waiting on an opportunity that's never going to come. So you're in LA, you've been there a couple months, you're doing all the things, you're really showing up. At what point does it all just turn into rainbows and sunshine and everything is so amazing? And I'm saying this with a smile because we know that's not how it goes.
No.
So tell me about the shit. Tell me when things like got real and hard and
sure.
what you were thinking and feeling.
And I feel like I'm kind of in that era right now. So I just hit my 1 year mark of being here. It's like a year and like 2 weeks. And so my first probably 4 months here were so quick. It was crazy because we talk about all of this waiting that we were doing, right? All of this waiting for so long for an opportunity. And the fact that I was able to make happen my biggest dreams within like 4 months of being here, I'm just like, damn, it was that easy this whole time. Not that it was easy. It was not easy, but like 4 months.
Like, what was I waiting for?
I waited 33 years of my life for it to happen in 4 fucking months. What? Okay. So it was kind of like, and I was actually talking about this to someone where, I don't know about you, but every year, and anytime there's like a year anniversary, I get so existential. I'm like, did I accomplish what I wanted to? And this year, when it comes to career, like, this is the first year that I can say I am so proud of how far I came in a year when it comes to my career. I really accomplished so many things that I wanted to. But with those highs, it's almost like, what is there to strive for next, right? So it really forced me to realign myself with those dreams and those goals. So I was able to check some really like long-standing dreams off my list, but it kind of like freed up my mind and my heart to really explore like, what does 33-year-old Emily want out of life? And like, what is the present day dream? Because you're checking off these bucket list things, but you have to keep dreaming, right? Or else then what? You can't just stay complacent. And so that's when I had this really weird reckoning where I was like, what do I want? I've been striving for something for so long that it's like clouded my judgment. And I definitely have goals. And I think I'm in that shitstorm right now of like self-doubt and like limiting beliefs, which is so crazy to think because, I checked all these boxes and I was able to do all these things, but it's like the Emily from 10 years ago helped the Emily from 5 years ago make it happen, helped the Emily from 2 years ago make it happen. And it's like I've had all these iterations of myself helping to get me to the place where I am now. And now it's like, now I have everything at my fingertips. I have this knowledge of if you set your mind to something, you can do it. But I'm like lost. And I don't have the deep-rooted drive necessarily to make certain other things happen, or it's a lot of like reckoning with myself and like, are you working towards something you really want, or is it towards an old dream? Do you have the skills that you thought you had to make this new thing happen? Or just it's a lot of pivoting and a lot of questioning now that I have almost like the mental space to allow myself to do it, because once you've checked a box, you got to keep moving.
But do you? I guess is my question, because as with anything, like if you think about like a race car and you're going really fast, and that's what you essentially talked about, how you experienced a quantum leap from DC, you left, you moved, all these things happening, boom, boom, bam. That is a quantum leap when things just take off. But what I've noticed, because I've had quantum leaps myself, after that like 3-4 month mark, things sort of like slow down and sputter out and you're coming off the high.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's almost like a withdrawal period. And it does feel very scary when you don't have a next goal to grasp. It's even scarier when you have no clarity about the next goal that you want to grasp. But I would say that this is such a special time to be in, even though it's murky and you're not really sure what's going on, because like a race car, you have to stop and fuel up and change the tires and all those other metaphors for racing. But you can't always be go, 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 go.
Yeah.
And so this is sort of your like pit stop, quite literally, where it's like, okay, like let's go inside, fill up the gas tank, get some snacks, like, and then check the GPS. all right, what's the next destination? Do we want to go there or what? It's scary. And it's like, oh my God, it just feels like having no clarity. Oh my God. I've been there so many times and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy because it really does fucking suck. But once you move through it and find it, then things just get a lot lighter.
For sure. And it's like, I know from everything that's happened over the past year that like I will find the clarity. But yeah, it is like coming off of a really big high and then almost like starting over again. And you're like, it just took all my might to get here and I have to do it again, which is the ride of life. But I will say, I feel like I'm also in this, you said pit stop, which is like, it's true. It's like I'm refueling my cup in other ways now, right? Like we've had this conversation privately where I want to fill the cup of, meeting new people. I want to fill the cup of, I've never been a person to date. Like I have always put dating so far on the back burner because I've been so tunnel vision towards, like career goals that I've had. I haven't even genuinely wanted to invest time into dating. And, looking at your life as a 33-year-old who's never had a real long-term relationship with anyone, I'm finally taking that pause and really exploring like, what do I want in my life outside of these things that I've been running towards for so long. And so while I don't necessarily have a ton of clarity, I feel like I'm gaining a better sense of self and a bigger, like a well-rounded version of myself that I've never really allowed myself to do before.
Yeah. And so I think that's part of the reality of chasing your dream, but also achieving it is you get there and you're like, now what?
Well, and also you get this, and I will say, like, I haven't fulfilled, right, everything that I've wanted to do. Little buckets here and there, but it is like, is this it? This is the dream? Like, am I, quote, living the dream? Because it doesn't feel like it, There is a reckoning sometimes that you come to when, and we had this conversation before, is it age? Is it just our age and we're jaded that the big things, the big moments that we would have been so hype about when we were younger just feel like a moment. They don't feel heightened. They don't feel extra. They don't feel. And so that is definitely a reckoning that you come with when you're chasing something so hard and then you get there.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, does this feel like I thought it would?
Oh, is it worth it? Is the pursuit of your dreams worth the hidden costs? And as you can hear from this episode, there are just things they don't tell you. The losses that you take in the interim when you're trying to realize those childhood dreams. This was such a juicy conversation. Like I said, so raw, so honest, so real. And that is only part one of our convo. You can expect part 2 on February 27th. And I know what you're thinking. What? 2 weeks? 2 weeks for part 2? It's because the Pisces season episode is going to be up next week. Finishing up the sign series. Crazy. I can't even believe I've gone through all 12 signs, deep dives, interviews with people who have that sun sign. So that's really exciting. You're going to love that. And I also just hope that you loved this episode. If you did, it would mean the world to me if you would rate 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or really wherever you listen to podcasts. I really want to move up in the ranks this year. We've been getting a lot more downloads, which is exciting, but the ratings and reviews help with rankings. So I would really appreciate that. Or if you would just tell a friend about the podcast, that would be amazing as well. And if you can't get enough of Astro Candy, if like Thursdays just doesn't quite do it for you, you need to have another sweet little spiritual treat. We've released a newsletter. It's called the Astro Candy Postcard, and you can sign up for that. It's free in the show notes. All right, I will see you next week for the sign series, Pisces. Bye.